Awake windows. Now, these can be really helpful or really unhelpful when it comes to the sleep of little ones. And if you're not sure what an awake window is, it's literally just a term that's applied to the amount of time that a child might have between the end of one nap and the beginning of the other, or the end of a nap and the beginning of bedtime. So it's just the amount of time they might be awake for. Now, I'm not against awake windows, and I do use them quite often, but purely as a suggestion. And whenever I make these suggestions to parents, I always very quickly follow it up with, but these are not evidence based. And that's really what I want to say today, is that if you're avidly following awake windows, thinking it's going to be the answer to all your child's sleep issues, please be aware that there is no science to back them up. Much as many sleep programs out there will prescribe a set amount of time for, age by age, no one has ever done a research study to come up with the ideal awake window. So I always tell people that if I suggest an awake window or someone else has suggested an awake window, it is purely a guesstimate, an estimation based on our understanding of probably what your child might require, given averages and our experience. So it's just an educated guess. That does not mean that if it doesn't work for your child, that there's something wrong with you or your child. It means that there's something wrong with the awake window. And the other thing that I see people worrying about as well is that they view awake windows almost like a deadline. And if they don't get their child down by the deadline, everything's just going to go awfully wrong, and baby's going to get overtired, and just dreadful things are going to happen. And of course, that's just not the case. Now, aside from the fact that they're not evidence-based, there's a couple of other things that I really want you to understand if you are keen to follow some sort of awake window pattern. Now, many people will try and use the exact same awake window all across the day and before bedtime. Now, in my experience, those windows of time usually get a bit longer across the day. So, for example, if you find that your little one can manage comfortably with roughly 3 hours of awake time in the morning, then it's highly probable that the next one will be somewhere between maybe 3.5 or 4 hours. But again, it's absolutely not set in stone, and please don't worry if this is not the case for your child. I only ever suggest awake windows for people who feel utterly clueless, like I did when mine were little, because I just remember thinking beyond the 10-day mark, because of course midwives only really look after babies up until 10 days in my experience, but after that 10 days had gone, I literally had no idea how much time my daughter should stay awake for. So when I discovered awake windows, it was a little bit of a revelation and a big clue. So basically, I only provide awake windows as a clue, but I am more than willing and always tell parents, look, your baby might prove my estimations completely wrong, and I am more than open to exploring other possibilities if that's the case. Now, the other thing to remember about awake windows is that they are changeable in terms of day-to-day activities. So one day you might be going off to the zoo or seeing relatives, and so babies either can manage to stay awake for epic amounts of time, or you notice that they're getting tired much quicker than they normally would. So with altered levels of activity, they're going to have altered levels of tiredness. So we just cannot try and stick to a set schedule if the day is really different to normal. And one more thing to know about awake windows, and I'd be interested if anybody else has noticed this. I've not seen it written in any of the literature, but in my experience, bigger babies often seem to have more stamina and can manage longer awake windows. Again, that is purely a generalization, because I've also met little tiny pocket rockets who can manage to go almost all day with no naps at all. So there is still a very broad range of normal. But largely when people are trying to follow generic programs and they tell me that, well, I'm trying to follow this awake window because the program says I have to, I'm always curious to know, well, has your program actually considered the weight of your child, the personality of your child? Because if they're not average size or average personality and they're either super chilled or super hyper, then we may be looking at completely different estimations from the ones that you're trying to follow. So now, if you're trying to follow awake windows and you're feeling like nothing is working, please just stop. If you've given it a good couple of goes for a few days and nothing has changed, it's totally okay to experiment. So you can go longer between naps, you can go shorter between naps. No one's going to turn into a pumpkin. On the other hand, if you're sick of clock watching and you just want to ditch it all completely, that is totally okay too. In most cases, babies just fall asleep when they're ready to, whether it's on us, in a carrier, in the car, in the pusher, or even just on the living room floor. Most will take the sleep when they need it without us needing to engineer a thing. And the reason most people worry is they're trying to engineer the perfect nap. They're trying to make sure that their baby goes down in the cot at a certain time and they sleep in the conditions that the book or the app has told them is optimal. Again, it's not essential that you follow any of these rules because most of them are not founded in any science whatsoever. It's just information that's been repeated that often and that we've come to accept it as what people do. So the takeaways from today are: awake windows are a rough approximation only. They are not set in stone. They are not the law. It's totally okay to experiment, or it's totally okay to not follow awake windows at all. If they're helpful and they work for you, awesome. If they're not, then just follow your baby's lead and watch for those tired signs. And if you really can't be bothered with that, just wait for them to fall asleep on the floor. You'll get the hint when they're tired.